Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. Today, we're checking out the snow album from Counting Crows, But a Miracle, The Complete Suites. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. So Counting Crows just released their 8th studio album on May 9th, and this is the completion of a project that they started back in 2021 with But a Miracle Suite 1. So this new release is the 4 tracks from Suite 1 combined with 5 new tracks to complete a full album. This album was actually finished back in 2022. It was originally supposed to be a second EP. It was going to be called But a Miracle Suite 2 with the intent of releasing it as a full 8-song album. So after completing the writing process for Suite 2, or for the 4 songs for Suite 2, Adam Duritz was working on backing vocals for Gang of Youth's 2022 album, Angel in Real Time. And by the way, if you're looking for a new band to check out, that's actually a really good album if you haven't listened to that one yet. But after reflecting on the songs he had written for Suite 2, he didn't really like the direction that those songs are going. So he decided to sit down and rewrite and rework them into what they would become on this album. Once they were done with the 5 new songs, they decided to scrap the whole Suite 2 idea and release this with Suite 1 as the complete suites. The band brought in Brian Deck to handle production work on the new album. He not only did the 4 songs from Suite 1, he also handled the 5 songs that made up the complete suites. But Counting Crows has actually worked with him a couple of times before. He's produced 2 of the band's last 3 albums. I think Underwater Sunshine was the only album of theirs that he hasn't done in that stretch. I think Counting Crows are one of those rare rock bands from the last 30, 35 years that has actually had a pretty stable lineup through most of their career. I think they've replaced their drummers twice, and I think the bass player just one time, but pretty much everyone else is all the same as what it has been since the early 90s. But a Miracle is only the band's 3rd album of new material in the last 17 years, and this is the band's first album of new material in 11. And musically, the band was at their peak in the 90s and early 2000s, where, when they would release their first 4 studio albums in a 9-year period. And I think the lack of consistent output over the last 17 years has really impacted the overall quality of their last several albums. And only releasing 4 albums over the last 23 years, I think has really kind of stalled out some of their momentum, because a lot of bands rely on that. Once they get on a roll, they kind of want to stay with that pace, releasing albums every several years, even every, 4 to 5 years. I think, in the 2020s, is kind of where a lot of bands are, because releasing only 4 albums over the last 23 years, I think has kind of broken up the momentum that the band had earlier in their career. But some bands are able to, take these long periods off from releasing albums and, just, hopping in the studio and picking up from, day one all over again. I think Counting Crows, because of this, breaking up the momentum that the band had earlier in their career, I think has led to, I don't want to say bad albums, because I don't think they've released a terrible album, but I think the albums could have been better than what they were. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the last 4 albums have been terrible. It just, I don't think they have the overall quality and consistency as their first 4 albums. And there's been a lot of times over the last 20 years where, to be completely honest, I've questioned the direction and the passion of the band. I think a lot of that changed when they released Suite 1 in 2021. There was nothing on there. The 4 tracks I wasn't blown away by. I thought 2 of the 4 tracks were good and probably better than some of the stuff that they've had on their last couple of albums. I think it was a big step forward for the band and better than a lot of the stuff they've done since Hard Candy. And Adam Duritz has been somebody that, from the very beginning, when August and Everything After came out and, Mr. Jones blew up, he seems like somebody that's really struggled coming to grips or coming to terms with his fame. And lyrically going over this album, it sounds like he's kind of accepted a lot of that, and I think that's where some of the improvement on this album has come from. The Complete Suites is actually the band's shortest album. It's 9 tracks, just under 41 minutes. It's about a minute shorter than Somewhere Under Wonderland. But pretty much the rest of Counting Crows' catalog has all been, 50 to 60 minutes long. The interesting thing is the 4 tracks from Suite 1 actually make up the second half of the album, with the 5 new tracks starting it off. Track listing is something that's really important to me. I know, in the streaming age we live in now, where most people listen to 1 or 2 songs off an album, track order really doesn't matter. With the song that kicks off the album could be any random song, and it doesn't matter to a lot of people. But I think, as somebody that listens to entire albums, if you really want to grab someone's attention, I think you need to have a really good song, a really strong song to kick the album off and to set the tone for the album. The album kicks off with a new song, With Love from A to Z, and it's this really cool, bluesy rock song. I think it's really reminiscent, of some of those better songs that Counting Crows had back in the 90s. And not only is it one of the best songs on this album, it's probably one of Counting Crows' best songs of the 21st century. And it sounds like it could have been, a forgotten or unused track from any of their first 4 albums. Spaceman in Tulsa is the second song on the album, was also the first single released. And it's a little heavier, a little faster than the opening track, and I think it does a good job kind of changing the pace up early on in the album. It also has that great catchy chorus that Counting Crows is really known for. Spaceman in Tulsa isn't all that different from a lot of the other songs off of Counting Crows' last couple of albums, but I think quality-wise, it's definitely a step up. One of the great things about Counting Crows are their live sets. Their live performances, the energy that they have on stage is unmatched. And the third song on the album, Boxcar, I think does a really good job capturing some of that energy on the album. It has this great guitar riff that Counting Crows really aren't all that known for, but it's not overpowering. It really doesn't steal the spotlight on the song either. It has this almost like Bruce Springsteen kind of rocking vibe to the song. And it wouldn't be a Counting Crows album without a piano-driven ballad. Virginia Through the Rain is probably my second favorite song off this album. It has a really nostalgic, kind of recovering the satellites kind of sound to it. It's a haunting and somber song, and lyrically, it's got feelings of isolation and loneliness in it. And then the last of the new songs, and also the second single they released off the album, is Under the Aurora. It's a little on the slower side, but it's more upbeat than Virginia Through the Rain, and it has this really familiar sound to it. And the first couple of times I listened to the album, I couldn't really place or really kind of figure out where I thought it sounded familiar from. Now I was reading a review that I found online about the album, and they said this song was Beatles-esque, and I thought that fit perfectly. Listening to this song, it doesn't sound like a Beatles song, but you can hear elements from some of those later 60s Beatles songs on it. It's upbeat, it's hopeful, it's melodic. It's a lot of things that Counting Crows really aren't all that known for, but they do a great job with it on this song. I think it really shows the maturity of the band from where they started 30 plus years ago to today. And then the last 4 songs on the album are the 4 songs from Suite 1, and they're definitely more hit or miss for me than the first 5. I think Elevator Boots and Angel of 14th Street are probably the best 2 of those 4 tracks. I could probably do without the song The Tall Grass, and I don't think it's a terrible song. I just it's a kind of a largely forgettable song, and that's kind of been my criticism for a lot of Counting Crows songs from their last several albums is, there's nothing really bad on there. There's nothing I can really point to say that, well, this is why this song is terrible. It just kind of, like I said, kind of largely forgettable. The song Bobby and the Rat King closes the album. And, typically what I like to see is a really strong song to kick off the album. It's kind of, like I said, a way to kind of set the tone for the album and have that be bookend with another really strong song at the end as kind of a closing statement. And while Bobby and the Rat King, I don't think is one of the best songs on the album, I think it's definitely one of the catchier ones, so I guess I'm okay with it closing the album. Overall, I think the Complete Suites tries to pull on some of that nostalgia from the 90s from the band, but doesn't come off forced. And I think it's the good thing about this album. Because what I don't want to see them do is, try to make a Recovering the Satellites Part 2 or August and Everything After Part 2. They're a very different band now than what they were in the early 90s. And this album pulls at some of that, but I think also shows the maturity the band has, 30 years into their career. The Complete Suites is something I think fans of Counting Crows are really going to enjoy, but I don't see this album, growing their fan base at all, which for a band this far into their career probably isn't a big deal. It's probably not something that they really strive for at this point. Something I really wish you would have done with this album is take the first 4 songs from Suite 1 and just set them aside and just focus on making a new 8 or 9 songs for the new album. Because I think looking at the new 5 songs and comparing them to the songs from Suite 1, I think there is a pretty sizable quality difference between the two, I think. I think Adam made the right decision to go back and rewrite those 5 new songs. So I think they're stronger now than probably what they were. As it is, though, the way this album is right now, I still think it's probably their best album since Hard Candy in 2002. But I think had they given us an entire album of songs like the first half of the album, I think it could have been one of their best albums ever. So if you're expecting a reboot of August and Everything After, or Recovering the Satellites, or Hard Candy, you're going to be disappointed by this album. But I still think it's a really good album. I'd probably give it a 7 out of 10, and we'll see how this album grows on me over the next several months and see if it makes it into my top 10 at the end of the year. As far as my favorite songs on the album, I think it's pretty obvious. It's the first 5 songs on here. The Tall Grass, though, is really the only track that, like I said, I can probably skip on this album. So one question I always ask myself doing these reviews is this an album that I'd own a physical copy of it? And because, like I said, I wasn't really blown away by Sweet One, so I didn't really know what to expect on the full album, I decided to wait to pre-order a copy of it. I wanted to stream it a couple of times first before I made that decision, but I'm not even sure if I made it all the way through the album before I hopped on the website for one of my local stores and grabbed a copy of it. But here's the front cover of the jacket. I will say that I thought this was a hype sticker on the shrink wrap when I picked it up, but it's actually on the jacket itself. And the artwork is not all that different than the artwork for Sweet One. There's the back cover of it. I did think it was kind of strange that they've got side A listed as Sweet Tooth and side B listed as Sweet One. Like I said, I thought Sweet One was going to be the first half of the album. I don't know if it's just they felt the 5 new songs were stronger and that's why they wanted to lead off the album, but you know, it's I don't know, it's something that most people out there really aren't going to care about, but it's something that caught my attention right away. And then this does have a printed inner sleeve with all the lyrics for the album on there. And I think there's only 2 different versions of this album. There's a standard black version, and then the colored pressing is on this. It's like a pink and purplish swirl kind of color on there. On the camera, it looks more blue than purple. I wish there was more of a pink swirl through there, but it looks okay. You know, at least it's not like a solid color. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think of this new Counting Crows album. Have you listened to it yet? Are you planning on picking up a copy of it? How would you rank the album? I'm sure this album is going to grow on me over the next several months, but let me know what you guys think. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me the old thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.